Hey everybody, welcome back to Work in Progress Wednesdays. Let me looking up. It's a little weird. Got second monitor over here. Anyway, we're back in Toon Boom this week, Toon Boom Harmony, and you'll see I haven't started animating yet. I've done a good number of layout sketches for each segment, and then I'm going to time that out to make an animatic and whatever. But I decided I'm going to spend at least this frame experimenting with some different rendering styles, and you'll see what I mean. I mean, here's a more traditional way of rendering this scene, which is I use the vector line art and I filled it in the same layer because they give you a color layer in Toon Boom. Actually, Harmony lets you have 4 layers: an underlay layer, a color art layer, a line art layer, and then an overlay layer on top of that. And you can decide if you want any of those layers to be vector or bitmap, and I'll get into that in a little bit. But this is just, straight up vector, and if you hit the little render to render the effects, because I've got shadows and I've got a highlight going on him, and it looks alright for, a basic effect. But, I was trying to figure out what kind of look do I want this to have, because I like the look of my rough pencils, which I do this with the soft brush, which is basically like a pencil. It was a nice addition when they introduced it in Animate Pro 3, and then when I upgraded to Harmony, it was the same brush as Pro 2, so I had to make it, which you can make that brush with just set a set a textured brush and then don't have a texture, so it's just soft, so it works really nice for sketching. But yeah, that's the a basic color. Like if I just did straight line work and colored it, which it looks nice enough on its own. Interesting little thought. When you're using like Animate Pro, you can tick a thing that renders. Let me just turn off the animate button so I don't accidentally animate stuff with keyframes and whatnot. But you can tick a box and it'll because right now it's rendering things in the OpenGL view, which is there's all kinds of stuff that it wants to save time and not render. It's like this is just a preview, and then if you hit the preview button, it shows you what it looks like when it renders out, so you get all these little gradients and some color changes and stuff. And that work, it's a one little box that you tick in Animate Pro when you're rendering, but then when you start using deformers, particularly the curve style deformer, which you have to get Harmony to get, I realized I started doing that and it didn't preview the deform, so like I'd hit the button and nothing would happen, but then I'd render out the image and there'd be all this warping, and I'm just gonna be doing this to the camera for the rest of this series, aren't I? Anyway, so enough technical talk. This is how this scene would look just straight up, and I was thinking, well, I really like the way my pencils look. I might just do a short in this style one time. But here's how an actual like pencil, just straight black. Well, it's not straight black. It's a black pencil color in the palette. I do the same with my red and my blues. They're red and blue color, but with a slight opacity, so that way you can get a little bit of variance when you go over. Because I like the idea of the textured brushes. In theory, they're nice because they have a nice little bit of grit to them and everything. But the problem is you have to lift your stylus up off the tablet when you're drawing, and it's like I tend to just draw straight and go overlapping a lot. And if you're doing it with a textured brush, you're just expanding the little virtual envelope that texture is in until you lift your thing off, and then it's another one. But if you use, an opacity, you can kind of get that a little bit better. So, here's a straight pencil kind of sketch, which is a nice effect. I mean, Bill Plimpton does a really great shading kind of style. Like this thing is something this big, it kills your arm. It's like, man, this is a lot of shading. I don't know. So I was experimenting. I also tried a pen style. Now I need to make some better pen brush. I mean, the default brushes in Toon Boom are, every time they have a new release, it's really good. I really loved when they introduced the soft brush. Marker's pretty good too. It's got a nice, it's similar, but it's got a little bit of a texture. And then some of the more textured brushes are a little bit, they don't scale that well, but they're good. Also, the bitmap brushes are also a nice change of pace. You'd think, oh, it's just the same brushes. No, it's a little bit different. The bitmap brushes are nice, except, when you're drawing in vector, and then it's like, okay, I drew this at like 1080, and I'd like to blow this up to, film resolution. I can do that. With bitmap brushes, it's like, well, I'm kind of terrified what's going to happen with that. But yeah, I need to make some more brushes for this, because by default, they changed the way the brushes work in Anime Pro 3 and Harmony 11, I think for the better, in that now you can go in with this little window, the Brush Properties tab, and you notice it'll have maximum size, and the minimum size is a percentage of the maximum size. The previous brush settings had like two. They had maximum size, min size, and a couple other things that weren't really that helpful. It's very easy to customize your brushes now, but the problem is that the default brushes have kind of a small gap. So if you want to make a big brush, it's not gonna go very small. So you can change that though, and set it so that like that's the problem I had when I was trying to do this, because I've been using Manga Studio for some brush art lately, and I really like the ability to do hatching really thin and then go huge. I'm just gonna be waving my hand. I say I'm very upset. I'm Bill Clinton. I feel your pain. Anyway, so I need to come up with a better brush if I want to try and do it in black. It kind of looks like a Christmas Carol Victorian illustration in a book. I don't know. And then this one I was playing around with different brushes, some of the bitmap brushes you get, which you start to see. Let me just render it and see what it does. It has to clear the preview, and hello. This is not the frame. It's not the frame I was looking for. It might be rendering because I changed the order around. That's another thing I'm going to get to in a second. I tried stacking these to see what the effect were for some of these, and this brush is this one has this has a blending mode. That could be why. But you see that the texture doesn't quite scale well over here. You start seeing the squares of the repeats, which I mean, you can change the scaling of the texture in the brush settings, which is another thing I need to play around with. I haven't done much with the bitmap textures yet, and I like them. It's a different thing to jump to when you're used to using the vectors and using bitmap brushes in other programs. It's like, I don't know. It's an experiment. I also tried some other. This one I just tried using, rather than the texture, I figured I'll just try the soft brush. And the problem with that is you get a lot of bleed, and you can use the eraser tool, and it has a lot of variations on the eraser you can have. You can have a soft eraser, a very soft eraser, or the hard edge one. And the problem is, like, if I had to do that for a lot, I would probably go a little insane. Just a little bit. Let's see. This one I was experimenting with just taking the texture and just using it as a paint fill, because the problem, like I said, if you draw over a same section again, it doesn't shade. So like on some extent I want to try just filling with a tone and then doing shadows on their own, but then I start getting this bleed on the edges, and I would have to go and erase it. I can understand doing that to an extent, but I really don't think I want to try and complicate my situation. So what I've been trying, let's see, I think I had the render, the pencil version, and one of these brushes. It wasn't that one. No, it wasn't that one. And no. I don't know. I mean, if you render it, assuming it will render. Okay, there we go. That's kind of a nice effect. I've got it set on. I've got the pencil shading layer, I believe, set to an overlay layer, and then I had to watch how I placed I've got a shadow, and then I've got the highlight of this. This is a door opening up while he's asleep, and what? And you want to place, it's a matter of where you want to place the highlight versus the shadow. Like, I mean, I probably could have just left this as the actual color and then just added the highlight on top of it, but I kind of want a little bit of the edge play between the shadow and the highlights, and then a little bit of natural color poking under it. And plus, I overcomplicate things. That's all I can say there. So I mean, no, I like how this is going. I really wanted, like, I had a problem before when I had these in the wrong order, and just you lost this ear in the highlights, and that's kind of a reason why I'm playing with the effects now, trying to figure out what I want it to look like. Like, I could just, I've been debating, should I try coloring it, or should I just go straight black and white and make it look like a pencil animation, which is going to require a lot of scratchy with the brush. And I mean, I'm fine with that if it helps, you know. I mean, that's a nice thing about Harmony. You can do a number of styles. You can do a very flash, you know, refined edge, and then you can do like a very scratchy pencily brush, or you can just do a very clean color fill, or you can experiment like I'm trying to do. And I don't know exactly what I'm trying. Because I don't know. Doing cross hatching per frame, like, am I going to have it solid and just move when the character moves, or am I going to have a harsh vibrating line? And I'm like, I don't know if I really like a black lines for shadows and all that stuff, although it does indicate that there was a hand involved in making it. So I don't know, I'm still experimenting. I kind of like this. I mean, I'm still, you notice it's really interesting on the OpenGL view when some stuff looks harsh like a charcoal drawing, and then it's like, oop, no, it's a nice little touch. Because I mean, you know, the tone thing, like this whole shadow that's painted on him, you know, that's just a matte, and then I painted it with a very obvious color in the painting, and then I've got it set up in the network view to be, I don't know if I should even bother opening that. That's just a whole mess. Like, you get the tone, you've got the highlight mask for the highlight, you've got the tone mask. Yeah, it's gonna get out of this. I think that's probably strobing things. So it's a, I don't know, it's a process, and I figure it's better to do this on 1 or 2 frames to test it, and then I could just spend the entire time animating, you know, just the clean line art, and then spend a whole other time once I'm happy with the animation going in and adding all these effects, and then spending more time after that adding sound effects, music. Yeah, I'm crazy. But this is good. This is a test film. This is a short film. That's the thing I gotta keep telling myself, you know, because I keep wanting to try and make things big and epic and crazy. And it's like, no, this is like gonna be a minute and a half, and we'll see what happens. So I'd like to thank you all for coming in. See you all on the other side.
To find out more, visit NoRightsProductions.com. Follow me on Twitter at twitter.com/NoRights. And hey, why don't you check out my Tumblr at norights.tumblr.com.